the Naira Academy page. I hope you can hear me clearly, and I hope you can see me clearly as well. All right. So today we're going to be going deep down into the things that cause financial trauma. We're going to be telling you how you can know that you're dealing with financial trauma. A lot of the times, a lot of people have or deal with financial trauma and they do not even know that they have financial trauma. All right, so before we even get into what the symptoms of financial trauma, let's even look at what financial trauma is first. Like I said, a lot of people do not understand what financial trauma is, hence the reason why we do not pay a lot of attention to it. Okay, so financial trauma is a financial wound or an injury that can cause disruptive behaviors with money, right? So a lot of times we tend to think of trauma as something extreme. We think of trauma as something very big, right? In fact, most people who have trauma will not always agree that they have trauma because they think of trauma as one very big thing, right? But trauma is not limited to dramatic events alone, right? Which means that the smallest incident can forever affect how you deal with money. So it might not be something big, it might be something just small, but it can affect how you relate with money, right? So in the same way that emotional and physical trauma elicit strong responses, when survivors are put in a certain environment, that is the same way financial trauma happens as well. So financial trauma is also an emotional wound, caused by distressing or destabilizing experiences with money in the past. Often not, it does not leave visible scars. It doesn't, right? Because it's right inside of us, but it can deeply impact how we think, how we feel, how we behave around money, for the rest of our lives if we do nothing about it. So when we hear trauma, like I said earlier, we're always thinking about those dramatic events, one very serious thing. Some people might even relate trauma to something that can even make you go crazy, But I want to tell you here today that trauma isn't defined by how loud the experience is, right? It's defined by the emotional imprint that it leaves behind. So that means that even small or repeated money related experiences would have a lasting effect. And we're going to be going deep down with examples to show how little experiences can affect your money journey. So just like emotional or physical trauma can cause a person to react strongly in a certain way or towards certain triggers, financial trauma also cause people to react strongly to financial triggers. And one of those things are opening a bill, checking your bank account, right? Making large purchases. So these reactions can show up as anxiety when you're making spending decisions. It can show up as shame when you're around debt. It can show up as guilt even when you're enjoying your money. It can show up as a form of avoidance of budgeting. You avoid investing. You even avoid opening bank emails because you just don't want to see those things that would bring up those emotions. It can also come as over control or overworking. So a lot of times you see yourself avoiding. You're avoiding to get into investments because of your past experiences around money. Because of something that has happened in the past. So you do not want to get into it anymore. That is trauma. Now, what are the sources of trauma? So most of the time, we can find trauma in our childhood. That's where it all starts from. But there are a list of other things, a list of other sources where trauma can emanate from, right? So one is growing up in chronic poverty or emotional economic instability. That can lead to trauma response. We'll get to how later. The next, number two, is experiencing sudden job loss or eviction or bankruptcy. That can also lead to financial trauma, right? Number three is living through parental financial neglect. You saw your parents struggle with money, you saw them struggle with debt, or even saw your parents divorce. That can also lead to financial trauma. And also, Another reason is being manipulated or controlled through money. That's financial abuse. Financial abuse can also lead to financial trauma. So all these things put together are different sources of financial trauma. But when we truly look at it, then we see that all these sources are rooted in one place, and that's our childhood. They're all rooted in our childhood. So most of the experiences that we had during childhood, the money blueprints that we were raised with, eventually when we try to either cope with them, when we try to either match up with them, can lead us to developing trauma, right? But the good news about everything about trauma is that you can heal. It's healable, right? With the right awareness, with the right tools, with the right support, which we are bringing to you through the Healing from Financial Trauma course that is coming up between the 14th to 18th of July 2025. We will be able to help you to change your financial story, right? So you can learn to feel safe again. You can learn to feel confident, right? And you can once more be in control of your money again. All right. So we've looked at the different sources of financial trauma. Now, I want us to get into the nitty-gritty of the matter today. And the main thing that we want to talk about today actually are the symptoms of financial trauma. So, what are those things that you will see in yourself and you will know that you have financial trauma? What are those things that you will see, those behaviors that you have that will point you to the direction that, oh, I might have financial trauma, or I might be dealing with financial trauma, right? So a lot of times, like I said, many people do not actually know that they're dealing with trauma. They don't know. They have no idea. But by the time we've gone through these symptoms and you see any one of them, right, come up, you see yourself one way or the other exhibit any of these responses, any of these symptoms, just know that you have trauma. But like we said, it is not something to be afraid of. It's not something to fidget about. Just know that healing is on the way. You're just one click away to joining us in the Healing from Financial Trauma course. So now let's get into the symptoms of financial trauma. So the first symptom of financial trauma that we're going to talk about here today is overspending. Overspending or compulsive shopping, right? So sometimes memories of growing up with no money can leave you feeling, less than yourself. It can leave you with a sense of insecurity. It can leave you vulnerable. It can even make you angry, very angry, right? There are so many people who are angry, with their parents, with their upbringing. They're angry with their childhood for the kind of stress, economic hardship they had to withstand while growing up. Now, what does this do to a lot of people who had this experience? What happens? What happens is that people like this tend to overcompensate by the time they start making money, right? They tend to overcompensate. Like someone told me, the person told me that she grew up in lack. Now, what happens is that whenever, because she grew up in lack, she gives her children everything, more than what they need. Both the ones they need and the ones they don't need. She gives them more than what they need. And that is her being overcompensating for her childhood, for the things she didn't have in her childhood. For some people, it's for themselves. They are overspending on things that they do not need. Why? Because they're just trying to, their brain is telling them, oh, all those things that you couldn't have when you were small, all those things now you can have them and more. So you see people acquiring things they do not need. And inadvertently, sometimes, most times, get themselves into debt. Most times run their finances down just to prove a point to their little self. All right? Okay. So also, in trying to overcompensate, people also turn to retail therapy, right? With money, and that also is a sign of financial trauma. All right, another sign of financial trauma is underspending. We've talked about overspending, right? And someone might think, no, underspending isn't trauma. Underspending is trauma. Underspending is a sign of trauma. Not wanting to spend at all can also be another symptom of financial trauma. It's telling you that there's something wrong. So you can't have it too high or too low. There must be a place of balance, right? So individuals who are also, like I said, who come from a background of poverty can also, so there are two things most times when people come from a place of lack. It's either they overcompensate or they become too rigid. And when they become too rigid, you see them underspending, right? So they become what I call extremely frugal. And the reason is because they feel as though their security can be taken away from them. So they feel they need to be seeing their money in their bank account every day. So they don't spend anything. So it's as bad as that they don't even invest. They don't even want to hear about investments. Especially when even what led to the lack is an experience, that plunged them into poverty. I'll give you an example. So someone shared their story in the Money Click. So the Money Click is a 1-year financial literacy program run by the Naira Academy, and you can be a part of it if you register and join us in January 2026. So someone shared a story in the Money Click early this year. So she shared a story about how the father who was doing very well, in those days, those banks in those days, how banks used to work then, they can be doing well today and the next day they fold up and they discharge everybody. So the father was working in this particular bank, life was good, life was going well, they were living in Festac, they were living in a duplex, life was very good. All of a sudden, his father was discharged from the bank, right? They laid him off. So the father decided that he was going to take everything he had and invest in a particular business. Unfortunately, the man was duped. He had nothing. They went from living in a duplex in Festac to moving to one Kwaku place in Okokomaiko. That's how bad it was. Right? Now, what did this do to this person? Now, the way her brain responded was that she became an adult, she started making money for herself, but she would not spend. She was so comfortable seeing her money in her bank account. Why? Because she didn't want to lose that security. Seeing her father lose that thing her brain has attached to security, she didn't want to lose it. She didn't even want to invest because she saw her father get into investment that plunged them into poverty. So that created a trauma in her. So if you see yourself in this situation, right? If you've had an experience before where you grew up in a family where things were good and at some point everything became bad, things went down, then you might just be dealing with trauma. If you see yourself overspending, too much money in your account, but it's still not enough for you, right? You still don't feel fulfilled. You don't even want to spend a dime. You're extremely frugal. Akagom, I think that's the word. Some call it Aradites, some call it akagom. If you see yourself in that situation, my brother, my sister, you are dealing with financial trauma. You are, yes. Now, another sign you're dealing with financial trauma is what I call workaholism. See all those workaholics in the office. Those people that they can work till 9 p.m. That is also a financial trauma. Now, if you grew up under extreme financial strain, you saw your parents struggle to make ends meet, right? It's very, very easy to throw yourself, into work and never relent. And the reason being because you're scared of reverting these circumstances. You're scared of being in the situation where your parents found themselves. So you see yourself overworking just to create a sense of financial security for yourself because you've tasted poverty. The truth is, if you come from lack, then you would have one form of trauma or the other, financial trauma or the other. If you come from lack, if you come from a background of scarcity, there is a high percentage, there's a very high chance that you must have developed trauma along the way. That is a fact. And the truth is, it's not something that you would have to outlive or just to wait while await time for it. No, you have to heal. You have to heal. So overworking yourself to exhaustion out of fear can come out of fear of losing financial stability, and that is a sign that you have financial trauma. That is a sign. So if you saw your parents work hard, if you see your parents overwork themselves, if you see your parents struggle, right? Now, there's a chance that you're overworking today because you do not want to find yourself in that situation. Yes, it is good not to find yourself in that situation, but you do not have to overstress yourself not to be in that situation. And if you find yourself coping, or if you find yourself reacting in that way, that you're overstressing yourself just because of your past experience, then that is a traumatic response. Another one, the fourth one, is hoarding. Hoarding. So in a way, hoarding is a form of, blanketing yourself in things, right? Things you don't, you're blanketing yourself in things so you don't feel vulnerable. So you feel safe. And so people with financial trauma may find themselves in, situations, maybe they had the hard time, so they find it difficult to let things go for fear that they might need those items one day. That's why people hoard, right? They came from a place of lack. They've tested what it is not to have this thing. So eventually they have one and then they don't need it anymore, but they keep it just in case they need it again. Before you know it, you have a whole room filled up with things that you do not really need. But your brain keeps telling you, no, don't throw it away. No, keep it. You might still need it. You might still need it. That's trauma. That is financial trauma. So imagine, for example, someone who was once homeless, right? If someone who was once homeless, will find it hard, to throw things away, to throw things like blankets away, things like shoes away. Because at some point, the person didn't have shoes. At some point, the person didn't have something to cover themselves with at night. At some point, the person didn't have clothes. So that might lead to a response where the person would hoard things, just in case. Who knows what will happen? Out of fear. Now, the next one and the last symptom that we'll be talking about today is under-earning. Under-earning. So sometimes your relationship with money can be so strained that you feel to advocate for yourself in the workplace, right? So you might wind up taking less pay because you feel asking for more might risk your job. So you find yourself stuck at one job for fear of failure at something new. Now, if you see yourself in this kind of situation, then you might also be dealing with financial trauma. You're dealing with financial trauma. All right. So now, having gone through all this, if any of these stories, if any of these symptoms, right, hit very close to home, if any of them resonates with you, then you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not broken. What you're experiencing is real and it's very valid. Financial trauma doesn't go away by ignoring it. It doesn't go away by pushing it harder. No, it doesn't. It takes intentional healing. It takes rewiring your old beliefs and building a healthier and more empowered relationship with money for you to get over financial trauma. And that's exactly why I created the Healing from Financial Trauma course here at the Naira Academy. So the healing from financial trauma course is a step-by-step journey to help you understand your money wounds, right? Release shame, write your financial story from a place of clarity, confidence, and self-worth, right? So in this course, we're going to be exploring your past. We're going to guide you to explore your past, right? We're going to guide you to break unhealthy money circles. We're going to guide you to we're going to give you practical tools that you're going to use to move forward emotionally and financially. So if you're ready to stop surviving, if you're ready to start thriving financially, this course is your next step, right? You can find all the details of the course on our page, on Instagram, on Facebook, and you can even get them on Threads as well. So if at all, also send us a DM or comment HEAL in this under the comments of this video, and we're going to send you all the details. And that's where we'll be drawing the curtains to this evening. Next time, we're going to be bringing you a little bit tips about how you can cope with financial trauma. But remember, all the details about everything concerning financial trauma and how you can move forward to healing and building a better relationship with money will be given to you in the Healing from Financial Trauma course. And as part of that course, you're also going to be getting a free guide that will help you on your journey to healing. So thank you very much for staying tuned to the end of this live session. I'm going to see you next time on Friday. All right. Bye-bye.